Good evening and welcome everyone to the Township of Chatham's Township Committee meeting for Thursday, December 15th, 2016. Greg, has adequate notice been given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given to both the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on January 8th, 2016. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the municipal building on January 8th, 2016. And notice was filed with the Township Clerk on January 8th, 2016.
Thank you. Would you all please rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Gallup?
For the last time here.
Okay. Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sullivan, said he'll be absent, and Mayor Ritter.
Here. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, before we begin our meeting tonight, I just want to ask everyone to bow their heads for a moment of silence. If you did not hear that earlier today, Leanna Brown passed away. So please keep her family in your thoughts and prayers as we pay our respects. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Karen, who would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would like to express our condolences on behalf of Chatham Township, on behalf of the Chathams at large, actually, on the passing of State Senator Leanna Brown. Leanna was a trailblazer. She was a standard bearer for women in politics. She was a great proponent of women getting involved, standing up for what they believe in. She was encouraging to me. She was a mentor and a friend. She was very involved in education of young people in the political scene, and a Republican to her last breath. The freeholders, as well as Governor Christie, have expressed condolences to her family, and certainly we are going to miss her a great deal. We are a better community for having Leanna serving along with us. She was certainly a great proponent of the Republican Club of the Chathams, which I know a lot of us have had the privilege and pleasure of belonging to. And once again, a real true standard bearer for public service. In a time where we see a lot of people in government and in leadership positions in it for themselves, Leanna was somebody who truly was the embodiment of public service. She did what she did for the betterment of the community and not as a matter of self. She was not a proponent of putting herself forward. She was really, really in it for the greater good. So we as a community are in her debt. Certainly we all look to her legacy as something to emulate, and I thank you for the opportunity to honor her. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. We have a special recognition tonight, one honoring Sergeant Bobby Sheets, but before we begin that one, we have our own retiree, so to speak, on our committee here. Bob Gallup, as you all know, is leaving the committee at the end of this year, and we'd like to just pay special tribute to Bob for his commitment and his efforts and work in the committee over the years. So I'm just going to read this resolution to you, Bob, and then the other committee members can say a few words. We've got something for you as well, and we'll ask members of the public to come forward and say a few words. So this is a resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham honoring Robert Gallup upon his retirement as a member of the Township Committee. Whereas Robert Gallup was elected and by the people of the Township of Chatham to serve a 3-year term on the Township Committee from 2008 through the year 2010. And whereas Robert Gallup was subsequently re-elected to serve 2 additional 3-year terms from 2011 through the year 2016. And whereas his fellow members of the Township Committee selected Robert Gallup to serve as Deputy Mayor of the Township for the year of 2011, 2012, and 2013. And whereas during his term, Robert Gallup served with distinction on the Public Safety Committee, General Administration, Finance, Personnel Committee, Joint Recreation Advisory Committee, Joint Municipal Court Committee, and Open Space Advisory Committee, and served as a liaison to the Morris County Board of Freeholders, the Community Emergency Response Team, the Chatham Emergency Squad, the Board of Education, the Municipal Alliance of the Chathams, the New Jersey League of Municipalities, the Chamber of Commerce, and to the Pilgrim Pipeline Citizen Committee. Whereas Robert Gallup always contributed a reasoned and quiet approach to discussions, a quick wit, and an ability to get quickly to the core of elements of an issue. And whereas Robert Gallup always treated his colleagues in the Township Committee, members of the public, and the Township staff with respect and dignity, and whereas Robert Gallup has exemplified the highest level of integrity and honesty in his position as Township Committee member and Deputy Mayor. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham that we hereby call upon residents to join us in expressing our sincere appreciation to Robert Gallup for his distinguished service as committee member and Deputy Mayor of Chatham Township, and further, we wish him and his family best wishes for success and happiness in the years ahead. And we have a plaque recognizing your service, and it won't be official until we do it official.
Mayor, you also need to vote, because it's in the form of a resolution.
Oh, okay. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gallup.
I think that's a good resolution.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mrs. Swartz.
Yes.
And Mayor Ritter.
Yes. We're down for a photo. Sure.
Come on up, guys.
Yeah, go ahead, go, come on. That'll be nice with the family. Oh shoot, what happened there?
Do you want to do it down there? Wherever you're comfortable with.
I'm good. I don't. I've told this story before, that when I was 20 years old and an intern on Capitol Hill, I was working for a congressman, and I still remember the guy's name, Mark Talisman. He was a legislative person or congressman in Ohio, and he was giving us a tour of the Capitol, and all impressive, and he's telling the ins and outs, and he said, he was talking about the president, and he said, you know, you don't want to be the first president to lose the country. And it's something that stayed with me my whole life. He was talking about the fact that this democracy is never, you know, assured on a national level, but what it meant to me on a local level is that, you know, the safety of our citizens is our #1 priority. If the people aren't safe in their house, if the kids aren't safe in our schools, we don't have a community. When I joined the committee 9 years ago, I was surprised that, to put it mildly, the police department was in a state of transition, if you will. And The committee wisely chose Chief Patton and then Chief Hennelly to lead the police department into really a current state where it needed to be. Technology changes, license plate reader, cameras in the cars, different hiring standards that someone's going to be hired only if they can eventually become the chief in town. Accreditation, Chief Henley spearheaded accreditation for the town. And so we proud of the fact that we transitioned into a first-class police department. And, you know, we always hear, you know, and we always talk about holding the line on taxes. And I've always, you know, struggled, you know, the two big areas to hold the line on are public works and police. That's where most of the money goes. But when it comes to public safety, the town knows that really the police department gets really what they deserve, that they're paid with gold, if you will. Because when a resident is in distress and there's a life or death issue, they're not thinking, let's hold the line on taxes. They're thinking, how many seconds is it going to be before help is on the way? And you'll hear tonight with Sergeant Sheets, I mean, that's what the police do. First responders, they're in 30 seconds saving lives. And so I was, you know, proud to be part of, you know, the police department becoming really, you know, the first-class department that it is, because, as I said, without that, a community really is nothing. My second passion when I joined this committee was open space, and I was on open space before I joined the Township Committee. And back in 2008, we had a study, and the study was about how to use open space. And one of the things that came out of the study was encourage connectivity with Chatham Township and neighboring communities. And I was proud to be on the grassroots of that. We started a subcommittee and basically asked residents, come out, tell us how we can better connect our community. And see them tonight are the Earls, and they came out and said, you know, there's a little place on Rose Terrace that is a dirt path, and that's a place for connectivity. We connected Southern Boulevard and Spring Street. And I'm proud that that word, connectivity, has become part of the lexicon of the Township Committee. Nothing really is done now without thinking of connectivity. How can we connect the town? Because we are not a town of a development here, a development there. We are a community. And the better that we connect our town, the better we are. We are a community garden, community policing, a senior center. So we are, in the end, a community. And the better that we connect, the better it is for all of us. Speaking of connecting, it's time for me to leave the Dios and reconnect with my family. I have to thank, you know, my wife Karen, Julia, Matthew, and Amanda. 9 years, a lot of nights I'm not home, working on the committee, and that's you know, they made that sacrifice so that I could do this, a passion of mine that I always wanted to do, and now I can come home at night and say, I don't understand the homework, have your mother help because it's too complicated for me. As we enter Chatham, the green sign says, Chatham, founded 1806. It's been said that when you serve on a committee like this, it's a relay. And so it's been a relay since 1806, and I've been privileged to hold the baton for 9 years. And I hope in that 9 years I've made some small difference, made the town a little safer, a little more connected, a little more of a community. And now it's my turn to pass the baton to my successor, John Mayer, who will take the office in January. And I say to John, best of luck. We hope you are a great committee person, because your success will be Chatham Township's success. We'll all be rooting for you. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Kathy Abbott. I'll be very brief. A former Township Committee woman who served with Bob, and I was there actually over 10 years ago at the Chatham Township Republican Committee when Bob first introduced himself and said, "Hello, I'm Bob Gallup, and I'm interested in public policy, and I'd like to run for Township Committee. I hope I have your support." Certainly Bob has served us well for 9 years with great intelligence, and I have to say, no personal agenda, nothing with property, with a business, with anything hidden at all. And Bob is always had a grasp of the issues and has served us very well with all goodwill towards the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my children tell me I have to speak. So it's been 9 years. We both were a lot younger when we both started this. But I met Bob 20-some-odd years ago, and I had no idea that he was interested in running for public office, especially as a Republican. However, what I did know about him was that he was smart and hardworking and trustworthy, and I'm so pleased that he's brought all of those attributes to the Township Committee for the last 9 years. So on behalf of the community that we call home, I'd like to thank you. And on behalf of my children, I'd like to thank you for being a great role model. I think we can all agree that public service is a noble concept. However, when you do it long enough, you realize that along with rewards comes some frustrations and even some disappointments. And in those times, some people give up, but you've never given up. And it's a great lesson for our children as well as for all of us. So thank you and congratulations.
That's a very tough act to follow. But I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Bob. Thank you for, I think your words were beautiful, Kurt, and you summed it up perfectly. So thank you for all your years of service, for being a great steward of the people, for just being a great representative of everyone, and thank you for always being a good friend as well. And I wish you the best of luck.
Hello, I'm Michael Barnes. My wife and I have a small story. We moved to the Chathams in 2012 and wanted to get married, and we couldn't think of a better way to have our wedding than in the community that we had chosen to live in. So we had the wedding at our own home, and it was presided over by one Bob Gallup. And I must say, having he officiate the ceremony made it truly memorable. He brought that sense of community. He welcomed us into the community, and we felt so honored to have him part of our wedding. So I just wanted to say thank you, Bob. You were just such a great introduction to the town of Chatham, which we have grown to love, and you represented so very well. And every night as I pass by that spot on the bed, on my way to bed, I think of Bob Gallup. Thank you.
I'd just like to add a few quick words at the risk of giving Bob a swelled head by everything that's been said so far. But it has been a privilege and an honor serving with you, Bob, and we'll miss your 9 years of experience. It's reassuring to know you're not going far, and I'm sure that the end of this era of your service is really just the beginning of family involvement and work involvements and everything else. So good luck going forward.
Thank you, Mike.
Bob, I would like to echo some of the finer, more clever sentiments of some of the folks here in our audience. It has been a pleasure getting to know you. It's been a pleasure working alongside you. It's been certainly to the benefit of all of us to have you here on the dais. It's been a benefit to the entire community to have you here on the dais. And I've enjoyed your wit, your often self-deprecating comments about barristers and counselors and attorneys and such. That's been very entertaining. And people who sit here in these chairs know that it's a commitment. It's a commitment to make all the different meetings. It's a commitment to serve on the various subcommittees. And And you've done a lot over 9 years. You've done a lot for the people of this township that we all take such pride in. So thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your friendship. And thank you for the experience you've brought to us all.
Thank you. Anyone else want to say anything? All right, well, Bob, again, I read the resolution, but I would echo everyone's comments. You know, it's been great time, and wish you the best of luck, and many happy days with the family. Moving on to our next resolution. This one is honoring Sergeant Bobby Sheets. I'll just read it here. It says, resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham honoring Robert Sheets for his years of faithful and dedicated service to the residents of Chatham Township. Whereas Robert Sheets began his career with the Chatham Township Police Department on July 31st, 1987, and will retire effective January 1st, 2017, after 29 and a half years of loyal and dedicated professional law enforcement service. And whereas during his employment with the Chatham Township Police Department, Robert Sheets served with distinction on special assignments with the Morris County Prosecutor's Office in 1993, as a member of the Fugitive Task Force, and again in 1996 as a member of the Narcotics Task Force. And whereas Robert Sheets was promoted to the rank of Sergeant on January 1st, 2010, and has now completed 7 years of outstanding work as a Sergeant, leading by example and demonstrating time and again an unwavering, caring, compassionate dedication to service. And whereas Robert Sheets has received 6 life-saving awards, 5 honorable service awards, 1 exceptional duty award, 2 meritorious service awards, and 6 chief of police commendations, and numerous other commendations. And whereas Sergeant Sheets has received countless letters of praise and gratitude from township residents and from other law enforcement agencies for assistance that he has rendered throughout his long career. And whereas Robert Sheets also briefly served as Police Department's lone motorcycle cop and has always been quick with a smile and an outstanding sense of humor. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham that we hereby recognize and extend our deep appreciation to Sergeant Robert Sheets upon the occasion of his retirement for his commitment to the highest standards of police professionalism and his many contributions to our community, and extend to him and Doreen our best wishes for success and happiness in the future. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gallo?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Chief, you want to say a few words?
A few words. I'll try not to get choked up. Bob and I came onto the police department at the same time together in 1987. Over the last 29 years, he and I have shared a lot of laughs, many serious conversations. We have witnessed the best a job has to offer and also the worst. Through it all, I've gotten to know him well as both a man and a cop's cop. Whether it is having to hear over and over again about his love for Filipino lumpias, the purchase of a snowblower many years ago, or more recently his adventurous trips to Sears, or how Planet Fitness has free bagels on the first Tuesday of each month, Bob was never shy to share everything about everything going on in his life, whether you wanted to hear about it or not, because that's exactly who Bob is. He's an open book. Once you understand where he's coming from, and believe me, for some it takes a while, you certainly learn to appreciate him even more. And if you have ever had the privilege to meet him, you could certainly never forget him. And I say that with all sincerity. Bob, I know you enjoyed your time here as a police officer, and the decision to retire was not an easy one. I know firsthand because of your countless trips to my office, retirement seminars, and repeated trips and phone calls to the pension people, always looking for reassurance that retiring was the right thing to do. At one point, I actually kidded that the pension people called me to tell Bob to stop bothering them. I can only imagine what Doreen had endured during this difficult decision. But Bob, you finally made it. Looking back, I could not help but think, and then had a chuckle at your expense, as you sought this reassurance about retirement. Probably one of your most unique characteristics is the ability to be so reassuring to others, even when you weren't really sure yourself. I don't know how you did it, but you did it so successfully throughout your career. You, without a doubt, will always be the most nervous, reassuring person I will ever know. But you know what? It worked for you, and it worked for so many people you came into contact with during your career. I'm happy for you and your family that you were finally able to convince yourself that it was time to retire. On a more serious note, as a police officer, you knew it wasn't always going to be easy living the life of a cop. The tragic calls, time away from your family on holidays, and so many other challenges, but you always stayed true to yourself and came to work each day and almost every day with a positive attitude, ready to serve those who counted on you the most. Most people will never understand the life of a police officer and the many sacrifices that have to be made, but you did. That being a police officer is who you are, not what you become, and that you were called to this job because not anyone can do it, and certainly not many did it better than you did. As we acknowledged in the resolution, you enjoyed much success in your career, but more important than your promotion and accolades was everything you did that went unnoticed by most. Before coming here tonight, I had the opportunity to look through the folders in your personnel file. In one, I found dozens and dozens of letters and cards from people who had come into contact with you during your career. As I sat and read them one by one, a reoccurring theme was most evident. You had touched the lives of so many people in so many ways, and I am sure if they were all here tonight to thank you again, the line would wrap around the building. See, if you ever met Bob, and most of you here have, you could certainly never forget him. If you met him because you were in distress, everything was going to be okay. And if it wasn't going to be okay, he certainly made you believe it was going to be okay. And when you realized it wasn't going to be okay, he stood by your side and he was there for you. That's because you're a caring, helpful, compassionate man, someone who went above and beyond each day of your career in service to others. The residents of Chatham certainly got their money's worth out of you. Be proud for all that you have accomplished in your career. You embodied everything that a police officer should strive to be and set the example for others to follow. Always so proud to be the son of a policeman, a loving husband to Doreen, and a proud father to both Eric and Kevin. Please leave here tonight with your family and friends knowing that your work is done, you've enjoyed a successful career, and your loyalty to the badge and dedicated service to the people of Chatham was greatly appreciated. I know I can speak for everyone here tonight when I say thank you for all you have done for the Township of Chatham over the past 29 years. May God bless you and your family with a long, happy, healthy, and well-deserved next chapter in your life. Not to finish, we'll make this quick. But before Bob leaves us tonight, we first wanted to present Doreen with this bouquet of flowers. Behind every great police officer is an even better woman. 29 years is a long time, and we'd like to thank you for sharing Bob with us for all these years. Now, Bob, at first I thought about getting him a nice set of golf clubs, but he doesn't play golf. And then I thought about getting him a horse to ride off into the sunset on to enjoy his retirement. But if you ever heard the story of a 6-second ride on the motorcycle, you understand why there's no horse here tonight. So with that said, Bob, we just have a couple parting gifts for you. But after 29 and a half years, well-deserved retirement badge, and a shadow box to honor your career here with all of your promotions and your badges. So congratulations. Thank you very much. Now you take stuff in a little bit of card. Another card. Thank you very much. Get
I just want to say a couple words.
Oh.
I have to thank my wife. I mean, all these years, I got to thank my kids. I have to thank former Chief John Patton, current Chief Stephen Henley, Mr. Chickarone, and the Township of Chatham. And every cop knows that the two happiest days of work is his first day on the job and his last day. So, thank you, everybody, and thank you so much for your support.
And,
Are there any more Bobs that want to quit tonight?
Does anyone else want to come up and say anything? Otherwise, we're going to take a brief recess. We have cake and...
Mayor, if I may, I would just like to add my comments
Sure.
about Sergeant Sheets. One of the great privileges of this job is to get to make friends with many of the employees and members that put their life on the line for us. And I didn't know I was going to get choked up like this, but Bob Sheets is a really special person, and we're all going to miss him. He has been, I think, the shining example of what we want all of our police officers to be.
Thank you, Tom.
May I?
Yes, of course.
I spend a lot of time at ShopRite because I go there every day. Sergeant Sheets, you are always spinning through, making sure that the epicenter of our community is smooth, nobody's banging into each other, slipping on grapes, doing those things. It sounds trivial, but it's so important. And what you do, what you've done for the township, the way you conduct yourself, with the dignity that's deserving of our township, but with the good humor that's deserving of a member of our community. It's a fine line, I know, for a police officer, but you come across as being both a friend and a protector. And I speak as a parent who's raised their kids here without incident into their 20s, for which I'm abundantly grateful. We are going to miss you, and you have set a great example for so many of our young men and women on the force. And I hope they all look to you and emulate you for your humor and your dignity. We thank you so very much.
With that, as I said, we'll take a brief recess to the back cafeteria area for some cake and punch. All right, welcome. We're back in session. We are supposed to have a presentation regarding the Shunpike Road Corridor Study, though I don't believe anyone is here this evening, so we'll postpone that to a date, excuse me, in the new year, and we'll begin with our reports. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick one from the Municipal Alliance. They had a joint meeting this week with their Madison Municipal Alliance as well as the Madison Chatham Coalition, which is the umbrella organization that works with both. And there was the announcement that I'll share is that there's a special Narcon training class designed for families and coworkers of people who may have addictive problems. So anyone who thinks that it would be to their advantage to know how to administer Narcan, the Morris Cares will be hosting a training program for those kinds of family members and colleagues on this coming Sunday, December 18th. So if you log on to the website, Morris Cares, you can get more details and register for that. And that's all for tonight, Mayor.
Mike, can I ask you, is Narcan available for home ownership, so to speak? You can keep it in your house?
I believe so. Yes, I think the specifics will be part of the training session, but I believe it's everything from administering it and having it and then outwards from there, how to recognize people who are having distress, how to avoid the distress in the first place. I think it's a full menu training session.
Great, very good. Thanks.
Bob?
Well, one final report. I just wanted to throw it out for the committee people for next year. I'd spoken to John Rusky about it. On Thanksgiving, I was walking Tucker, my dog, a lot on Myersville Road. And when I was actually thinking about what I wanted to say tonight, I went back and looked at the 2008 walkway and bikeway plan. And they had mentioned that the sidewalk on Myersville Road in need of repair. And there was a new development, if you will, and there was a brand new sidewalk on it. And I asked John, I said, how is there a new sidewalk there, and there's other new construction there, and there's an old sidewalk? And apparently the answer is when it's part of a subdivision, a new sidewalk is put in as part of the requirement, but there's no requirement if there's a tear down for someone to upgrade to a new sidewalk. And so I was thinking about it. So when there's a tear down, everything is put up to code. The only thing that's not put up to code is the old dilapidated black macadam sidewalk in front of the house. So I was thinking that perhaps next year that it may be a good idea to think about when there's new construction or when there's a substantial tear down, whatever the percentage the committee thinks is appropriate, that as part of that project, that there be a requirement that they bring any existing sidewalk up to code. So I just wanted to throw that out for any discussion but you have now a mismatch of, especially on Myersville Road, you have a brand new beautiful sidewalk, and then again you have these brand new houses, and then in front of them are the old macadam sidewalks. And I thought if we could bring the ordinance perhaps up to date, if you will, and require new sidewalks, it would partly solve the issue. If the township doesn't want to engage in that capital expenditure, then the person getting the benefit of the sidewalk would be required to upgrade it. Don is looking at me like,
Nice shot. The problem, one of the problems, there's a couple. We've tried to tackle this, as you know, over the last 9 years, and we are not consistent throughout town. We have, whole sections of town where there are no sidewalks, and people where there are these sidewalks without really a history of how they even got to be there, don't particularly feel that they're being treated fairly if they're required to put in a sidewalk and maintain it and plow it and remove snow and ice and all that kind of stuff. Additionally, specifically on Myersville Road, one of the more recent developments that Harvey Kaplan did had the planning board imposed a requirement for a sidewalk. You'll probably recall that would have required the removal of all those large pine trees. And the neighbors were up in arms and picketed and saved the trees, and as a result, that still is in limbo. The condition that was imposed by the planning board to install that sidewalk still stands. Harvey was supposed to go back to the board with a request to remove the condition so that he could ultimately close out the project and get back his escrow deposits and all of that. But for whatever reason, never did. So that's kind of still in limbo. Right now, there is still technically a requirement for that sidewalk to be put in, but I think if there's other sections that are similar, that, you know, when it involves the removal of trees, people get upset. You know what we went through with and are still going through with the discussion with the sidewalk on Lafayette. So it's not as easy. I wish it were, but it gets complicated.
Understood, but I want to, having served for 9 years, understand that government moves slowly. What I'm specifically proposing is when there is an existing sidewalk, okay? And actually, you know, if you...
I understand. No, I understand.
I'm not asking for new
I've
sidewalks.
advocated for a number of years that the township consider an ordinance that would require homeowners to be responsible for everything out to the curb, including those sidewalks. Because right now, unfortunately, most of them wind up being our responsibility. And we don't have the resources to maintain what's out there now, let alone replace them all.
And I'm particularly, again, kind of like having me understand how government works and to identify an area of particular need. When you look at Myersville Road, you have a high-speed road, you know, divided highway, you know, with, you know, 35-mile-an-hour county road.
County road.
And it is used by, that sidewalk is used by people on a basis to, you know, walk their dogs and whatever and get out, whatever. And so that's a particular area of, you know, high risk with very, you know, 1960 sidewalks that perhaps next year the committee would want to, you know, take a look at in and of itself, that particular area. Maybe we can, you know, do one thing at a time. And sidewalks, we've been very deliberate about making sure that when we do it, it's absolutely needed. We're not looking to put, you know, sidewalks, you know, all over town. That's totally clear. But when we identify an area that's specifically really in need of repair, and this is an area that was identified in 2008, so you can imagine, you know, 8 years, it's continued to deteriorate. Perhaps that's an area the committee can look at to target for improvement.
Something, you know, I think the new committee next year can look at.
Are there school bus stops along that section? Is that where kids
There are.
stop and get to school?
Candace Lane is a school bus
Right,
stop.
and that has
Dog
one
work.
of those mishmash sidewalks. Like out of nowhere, there's a sidewalk at the bottom of Candace Lane and then there's nothing.
Right.
And are you talking about along that same?
I'm
stretch
talking
of road?
specifically on Myersville Road. If I could just pass the picture on the left there,
Right.
it's right in front of the municipal building,
Right.
and it's, you know, it's a very, you know, really it's a dangerous sidewalk.
Yeah. But again, there's just not a clear history of ownership. As you point out, it is a county road. So I don't know, you know, the county refuses to take responsibility. They say, we didn't put it there, it's not ours. I don't know that we put it there either. I don't know what the history is, but it's problematic. And Myersville Road is particularly problematic because of the nature of it being kind of a country road. It's highly trafficked, a lot of bicycle traffic, fair amount of pedestrian traffic, varying widths, varying speed limits. It's a tough one.
Totally.
Well,
It's
The next committee can certainly look
committee,
at it
yep.
yet again.
Right. Anything else, Bob?
That's it.
Thank you. Karen? Great. I just have a couple of items. One, for those of you who are on the website, you know that we've got a community calendar on the website now, as well as a town calendar, as it were. If you're looking at the community calendar, you can actually download an app for it. It's a Burbio app, B-U-R-B-I-O. So think about that if you want to get updates on your own smartphone regarding the community events. Obviously, with winter approaching, we just want to remind all residents to either register or update their profiles in Act Now, which is the old Everbridge system, Alert Chatham Township Now. You can do that on the website as well. And remind folks to like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. Again, as these winter season approaches, a lot of good information out there for residents to keep abreast of how to prepare themselves for the winter, and if there's any emergencies or things that are going on, it's always a great way for us to get a hold of our residents. And then, since we probably won't see everyone until the first of the year, and the potential snowstorms, just remind everyone that if you have fire hydrants in your neighborhood, to please make every effort to clear those fire hydrants out when the snow falls. Pair up with some neighbors and get together and do this. Make it a community event the fire department greatly appreciates those efforts. Turn it over to you, John.
Thank you. Just an update on the Safe Routes to School grant. Just so that, just an update on it. It is still in the hands of the NJDOT. Basically, there hasn't been a lot of activity, frankly, almost up to a year now, with the DOT. And I don't know why they're not giving me any specific reasons why they are still kind of they're at the point where they're still negotiating with their own consultant on a scope and fee. And that is the current step, is them to negotiate with that consultant, agree on a price, and then present it to the township to ultimately retain that consultant to do the work. And the DOT would assure us that they would fund 100% of that consulting fee. Again, frankly, I've over the last year, probably monthly, I have reached out to the DOT just to make sure that there's absolutely nothing that we should be doing to advancing the project, and I'm repeatedly assured that it is in their hands. I suspected in the beginning of the year that we had the stop work order for the Transportation Trust, that I saw a slowdown with the DOT general activities. Again, it's all speculation on my part, and again, speculating. The Mike Russo, who is the director of the 4 municipal local aid offices in New Jersey, he's the director. He did go out on leave. I'm not sure if it was medical leave or what. He went on leave, and he's been out for the last couple months. He is returning in the beginning of the year. And even with our meeting with him, he was clearly the decision maker. He was the one who was championing this whole program, and he's been out. So that may be why there hasn't been a lot of activity, because he's been on leave. But he is coming back in January. He has always been a great resource to reach out to and get responses. And so I think in January I should have a more definitive date of what's happening and how do we advance it. As you know, the target date was to do this work during the summer when school is out, and that summer 2017 is frankly around the corner when you look at what they need to do. If we start to have a more harsh winter, they're not going to be able to even survey until March, April, and that just puts the time frame almost impossible to make that summer date. So I have been constantly reaching out to the DOT, seeing if there's anything we can do to assist, and we haven't gotten any feedback. So that's where we are. Would like to report more progress, but again, it's completely in the hands of the DOT. The second issue I want to bring up today is the DOT did announce that they are accepting applications for the municipal aid grant. The municipal aid grants are primarily focused on road improvements. They allocate, I believe it's 90% they allocate for roads and then 10% for pedestrian projects. Discussed it with Tom on what project that we may want to recommend. We're suggesting Dale and Roberts. It's a neighborhood road. However, the road is severely deteriorated, and it is a significant project to be undertaken. It's about $285,000 to mill and pave those roads, given their length. The concern I have, we typically try to request 80% of the construction costs. That's typically what we would request. But that's I don't think, because it's a neighborhood road, I think we're going to rate high on the condition of the road being poor, but it is still a neighborhood road versus a more connector like Noe or Fairmont. So I suggest that we don't we request a very modest grant amount, say $120,000. I think that would put us in a very good position to get an award versus being very aggressive and trying to do more. So
can I jump in for a
sure.
moment? Because along those lines of kind of going more modest, I think it would be my recommendation that we apply for Robert. Forget about Dale. Do Robert. I think we can justify that because it does intersect with Southern Boulevard, carries a lot of the traffic from Southern Boulevard School to and from, and does fit more into the profile of being like Noe like Lafayette in that it does run, intersects with Southern Boulevard. And then rather than having to wait for the grant announcements, which wouldn't even come out until the fall of 2017, that we figure that our paving plan for 2017 is going to be the lower half of Wickham Woods, where we're doing the drainage work now, and Dale Drive. So it would be a substantial amount of paving that we would be authorizing in the capital budget in 2017 and apply for a grant to do Robert as connecting, obviously, into Dale, but in a slightly different definition of the way that road is used. So that's my recommendation.
And that's fine. That's fine. It's more of, if we're going to do a local road, it's my experience has been is to request a modest amount versus requesting that 150, 160, 180,000. Request a more modest amount. It puts us in a better position.
Do we have a?
Sorry, Your Honor. Is there any doubt that much of the deterioration on Dale Drive has been caused by all the construction, so on, which is not going to end? I mean, at least Robert, it's a smallish street, and they're kind of done there for a while. I
think Dale is largely done. There are still a few of the older vintage homes that probably are still going to come down. I think some of the deterioration certainly is a result of the ongoing heavy traffic there, but we also haven't touched it, other than some patchwork over the course of the last 15 years.
We specifically have
we
not
stayed
touched
away
Dale
because
of all the construction activity. So
we've been waiting for it to be mostly finished, and I think we're at that point where it would be safe to do it. All of the existing properties have sewer and water services, so there shouldn't be a need to dig the road up afterwards, and that's something we need to look at, having moratoriums on these streets after we pave them so that you don't have road openings. But I don't, I can't assure you that there's not going to be more construction, but I don't think we can wait.
No.
Robert, I think Dale right now may be the worst conditioned street in town.
Next to Lenape Trail, with all due respect. But,
Do you live on Lenape?
Huh? No.
No, okay.
It's just, but I walk there a lot, and it's...
All right, well, we'll look at that again, too.
Yeah, take a look at Lenape Trail. And my other question regarding road improvement would be, what about when New Jersey American Water does come in and do their repair work on Lafayette, which they have sort of advanced the notion about? Would we be able to apply somehow for a grant in that regard after they tear
We
up
just did
out of here?
Lafayette fairly recently.
Exactly.
So New Jersey American, they will be required to put it back together the same way that they just did Southern Boulevard.
Okay. So that wouldn't
they
be a
approached
burden on the township.
They approached us like within 6 months after we paved
Exactly.
the road that they wanted to replace that, clean that water main.
Right, and now they're back again,
Yes.
thinking that they let us cool off with our brand new street for a
Typically,
little while.
I think it's probably been 5 years, though.
It has been.
So, typically, a moratorium on openings doesn't go beyond 5 years, and you can always have emergency breaks and stuff anyway.
So that would
which
be their
happens.
job for repairing that.
Yeah, we have to hold them to a high standard as far as the repair. And I don't want to get too deep into this discussion tonight because it's kind of off John's topic. He was just throwing it out there. We'll talk about this in more detail as part of the capital budget for 2017.
Fine.
But as you're thinking about it, that's where our thinking is right now is, to do the lower half of Wickham Woods and to do Dale Drive.
Right.
And if we can also take a look at that neighborhood of Lenape and Falmouth, that's a relatively small neighborhood. I don't remember where that was on our schedule. It might be coming up this year anyway, so we'll look at that.
Right.
It
Sorry
is,
for the
the DOT, this is an awkward time. They usually don't announce grants and during over the holidays, so, we have a limited time to, for the committee to ultimately pass a resolution for the application because it's due early February. So that's why I'm bringing it up tonight so that we can just, talk about the project so that it can be prepared and then, not sure beyond the reorg, but the second meeting in January so that we can get it in for the February due date. So if everyone agrees, I think Roberts, we can focus on Roberts and that'd be a good application. Excuse me?
Only one.
There's no S, it's
Robert.
just Robert Drive. I don't know who Robert was, but
Only one of them.
it's a popular name tonight.
Well, Also, we did receive the rebid for the electrical improvements for the municipal building. The bid, we have a base bid that includes one portable storage tank and then a supplemental bid item that included a second storage tank. The base bid does fall within the available funding, so we are prepared to make a recommendation at a minimum to prepare an award for the base bid. However, I did reach out to the state police, who does administer the FEMA grants, and they're going to look and see if they, before we do an award, to see if there is any additional money available, so that we could award the supplemental and go with, with the two portable tanks instead of one. So at this time, we're just holding off to award that in January. We did, for whatever reason, the state police, they didn't process or review our bid documents and process our paperwork. It kind of fell to on their wayside, and so we're kind of very late in the grant program. But they did give us an extension because they recognized that it was their fault. They didn't review the documents timely, and so I did get. They have no problem with an award in January and finishing the project early in 2017. So in January, hopefully, we have some good news and we get a little more money from FEMA to award the entire project. There is the project in Wickham Woods, the Phase 2 drainage projects, where we're picking up all the sump pumps that are discharging into the roadway. If you drive into that, the Phase 1 portion, it's night and day regarding the amount of ice. There's no ice on the roads, and great improvements in that area. And so for the Phase 2, we're going to be seeing the same benefits. So far, no problems or issues regarding that project. There was a little bit of a delay with Comcast marking out their underground utilities, but what they finally did come in and mark them, and then so we are moving full steam ahead with that project. So far so good. The other project that is active is the replacement of the Colony Pool wall. The contractor did start later than I hoped, but he is working diligently on trying to get the first concrete pour in. There are cold weather procedures that he has to follow, which putting proper chemicals in the concrete so it doesn't freeze, and adding blankets and other procedures that they do to make sure the work is done properly. So it's not a problem that they're working in the winter. It's just that the contractor has to follow those procedures and make sure that quality control goes in. We did have an unforeseen situation come up with the Colony Pool project. As part of the planning of the project, I did have the DPW install some test pits around the walls just to know what type of soil types we're getting into. But the soil types that was actually behind the wall, that we didn't excavate that area because we would have had to remove the concrete. What we found is some very poor clay material that it's not going to be appropriate to put that back underneath the concrete slab. I think we need to look at a change order to bring in more imported material to properly stabilize that concrete. To appreciate how poorly compressive that soil is, when they were removing that 4-inch concrete slab, they actually had in one location they removed 3 different slabs. It looked like that they installed the slab, the first slab sunk, they poured another one on it, and then the next one sunk, and then they poured a third one on it. So the soils are just so the soils are very poor, and I don't want to put those back because I don't want that to happen. So I don't believe it's going to be a major change order. I'm working out with the contractor right now on bringing that in, but it is an unforeseen situation that has arisen, and we'll work that out with the contractor. The last item that I'm bringing up is the DPW had historically over the years have worked with a contractor that provided snow plowing services if the storm exceeded 4 inches. And just recently, they got a call from the contractor saying, I'm not available this year. So I did work with the DPW. I put together a bid package to go out immediately to receive bids, to get pricing from other contractors that would be available. It's a service that's utilized only if needed. It's only for major storm events. If they're in a bind, they can call up a vendor to assist. And so just need the committee's authorization to go out to bid for that, and then we'll bid that immediately, and hopefully at least award early January so that they're available.
And how does a service like that charge?
The
Per
charge,
storm,
the
or is it a flat fee? Or?
flat rate. It's usually, the way it's the contract or the arrangement that is that it's on a per hour basis.
Okay.
And it's per hour based on the size of the truck. And so we go out to bid for a truck that's an 8-foot plow or less, which is usually a pickup, or a 10-foot plow or less, which is a single axle dump truck. So we're large. And so historically, the vendor that we use, he always had 3 trucks. So we're looking for that's historically. DPW can likely, depending on the storm, we probably could use less, but it's just getting the prices so that they're available if needed.
Right.
And so, and it is on an hourly basis. And there was a retainer fee in the past, but we were thinking of just taking that out and just paying the contractor on a per hour basis, just as needed.
And the rule of thumb is 4 hours, 4 inches rather, or?
That has been the protocol for the DPWs when they would consider calling someone in.
Right.
Yeah, and they're used in specific areas, Sandy Hill, Oak Hill, and like my neighborhood, and Green Village, which I guess would just be Britton Road, right, in Green Village?
Yeah, that's Britton Road and Green Village Firehouse.
So you just need a consensus?
Yeah, just authorization to go out to bid,
Anyone have any issues with that? No? There's not.
And then if we get bids that look attractive, we'll be back for an award in January. And in the absence of that, what the consequences of not having somebody available is that Public Works would have to work more hours to finish the job.
Yep.
Oh.
Great.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thanks, John. Tom? Chief? Rich? Anyone? Good. All right, moving on to our hearing of citizens. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearing tonight. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes.
I'm up again. I have a few things.
Are you going to deduct a minute from when Kathy was up earlier?
You get three
No, but I have 3
minutes.
things, so I guess I got to get through a minute each. Yeah, it just so happens to be a meeting where it was a good time for me to be here. For one thing, Safe Routes to School Committee finished its parent survey, and we have to give the details to you. Obviously, it's something that requires a lot of combing through details of comments, but I can just summarize that the main roads were the issues of concern. People are still asking for the sidewalk on Lafayette, not realizing that the things that John reported of why it's not there yet. Southern Boulevard had the most comments. A concrete suggestion just to think about, there's many concrete suggestions, but one is maybe even when the next grant comes through, whenever it's possible, a flashing pedestrian light on at Southern and Lafayette, so that people when non-school hours can cross, like going to Colony Pool from Wickham Woods is one of the suggestions. But so this is, valid, and also a lot of the comments are worth considering, and so we'll be giving that to you. We also asked this year we got more participation, and we also asked about bus stops. So Kurt, your neighborhood, for example, people are saying that there's no. Well, you've probably heard them already. What are you saying?
No bears at the bus stop?
No. Bears were not in the comments, but that it's pitch black and they need a street light by the bus stop. That's an interesting point. It's this time of year. That there's vegetation on Van Houten in a couple different places that prevents people from walking safely to the bus stop or standing at the bus stop. I'm not sure which. All these things the comments are brief, sometimes vague, and you have to be investigated. So, but I think, we benefit from having this survey, and people feel happy to do it. Also, you were talking about snow shoveling or sidewalk issues and maintenance of sidewalks. people just randomly mention that they're, not everybody shovels their sidewalk. And Tom, you were mentioning we don't know how we got the sidewalks, but in analyzing for the last few years about where our sidewalks are in Safe Routes to School, if you look at where they are, they're all related, I think, to a building of a school or a surge in students at a school, including the Lafayette sidewalk. Why is it on the west side of the street? Well, that's because it was a township school, the high school and Lafayette School. And the east side, where there's no sidewalk, most of the houses, except at the very end, are borough. And so there weren't students trying to get to the high school on Lafayette and Lafayette School at that time. And so we kind of have to get up to the 1986 merger and just get a sidewalk over there, which we're doing, but also even the macadam. I heard from this woman who's now a librarian at the library that she lived in Wickham Woods, and they built that macadam sidewalk when Mountain View School opened. And she said it was a bicycle parade down from Wickham Woods all the way to here. And so that was built for this school. Candace Lane probably coincided. That lone sidewalk on Candace Lane, it's mysterious why no other road has a sidewalk. Well, probably it's because it was leading to Mountain View School. Certainly the connectivity on Myersville Road on the bottom of Candace Lane is right to this building with the macadam sidewalk, that, crummy macadam sidewalk that was okay at one point. So, yeah, Safe Routes to School is certainly on to something when you're looking at, okay, sidewalks go where school pedestrians should be. Of course, so more and more people are walking for exercise, adults, and so that's something else, and we have that whole plan where we have activity centers as well as schools as connectivity of sidewalks. But I wanted to let you know that with the snow shoveling, I mean, I think it's a matter of political will, and the Safe Routes to School Committee would continue to lobby for a snow shoveling ordinance on the places where there are sidewalks, because it's a benefit mostly to school children, but also to everyone. And we, listening to the objections about, well, what about people who don't have the financial means to shovel and are older, can't shovel, we organized a snow shoveling volunteer operation that's just, hasn't gotten going yet, but it's in the works with the senior center. And so there are people signed up. There's students signed up through the National Honor Society and the Key Club. And the senior center is has a list of people who are interested. And it's not being advertised far and wide because we have to keep balancing the requests with the number of volunteers. But it is, we've done that to remove the objection to having a snow shoveling ordinance and keeping the sidewalks clear, including right in front of the high school where it's been a problem. Okay, and then one specific thing at this time of year, which is why I'm here now also, is that we have, I know you have to reevaluate the bylaws and pass them for the reorg meeting in January, and this is the last meeting before that. And I recommend, the Safe Routes to School Committee recommends that we have in the township a traffic safety committee. I know that Kurt, your leadership has been a lot in communications and getting information to the public, but the public also needs a place to communicate back to the township in a concerted effort without, in one meeting, I think, just like the borough has a traffic safety committee where you have the engineer, you have the borough councilman liaison, you have the traffic safety officer, and then you have some volunteer members of the public who are on that committee, just like they're on other committees. So I just think it's very efficient, and that meets monthly, but sometimes they cancel if there's no apparent need, or we could do it quarterly. But I just think in the bylaws, the Safe Routes to School Committee is recommending that the township get a traffic safety committee to handle in an efficient and transparent way all the pedestrian safety issues. Next two will be briefer. I just want to make a plug for maintaining our open space, and I know we've got a lot going on that you can't talk about in the executive session with affordable housing, but obviously this coming year is going to be huge for potentially changing the face of the township, and also increasing the population by a lot. Whether I'd like to hear from you, or at this meeting or some other time, about what is do we know the required number of affordable housing units? Okay, I mean, if you can give a range to the public, that would be good. Is it over 100, over 200?
Don't know, likely to be somewhere between, I would guess, 100 and 500.
Okay, that's fair.
All right, and then, again, as has been said before at this meeting, I certainly encourage you not to eat up the open space and try to buy existing housing stock, multifamily dwellings that exist that could be converted to affordable housing if the township has an option to do that legally. Also, with the Christmas tree farm that's been sold to a developer, if you have any leverage to keep that public accessible so that there's connectivity, at least for pedestrians, from the current walking path on the open space on the uphill side of Hillside Avenue down through that new development as you would any normal street. Like, I just hope that it's not going to be a closed condominium
Kathy, you're kind of
development.
getting ahead of yourself, okay? That project will have to go before the planning board. Right now, the status of it is they've made a request for changing of the zoning. They're going to be doing a presentation of that concept to the planning board. Eventually, if that gets approved, they then will have to come in with a development plan, and the things you're talking about would be addressed at that time.
Okay, well, anyway, the point is the township committee has some influence over the appointees of the planning board, whatever. There's a lot of reasons the township committee can have some influence, even, and going forward, I just think, again, the connectivity, people having access to that, just even for walking, if not driving, is important, and I hope that some easements could be negotiated through the planning board, approved by the township committee in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Can I just tag on, John, regarding safe walking, and I think it's in New Providence where they have this, I don't know how new it is, but they have these flagpoles on each side of the intersection. And in particular dangerous intersections, the kid can take the flagpole, walk across the street with the flagpole and put it in the base on the other side of the street. Is that becoming a common technique for safe passages across particularly dangerous intersections?
I wouldn't say common. I have seen that technique before, but other than that location, I'm
We could
not
get
sure.
rid of crossing guards, give everybody their own little stop sign as to use as they walk across.
It was just that there's a couple, it was pointed out to me that there's a particular intersection actually crossing Southern Boulevard to the country store, which a lot of kids do, and that's a particular curve in the road, and perhaps that's an area that might benefit from that unique setup because of the turn in the road. It's accessed by kids to go to the store and get snacks and whatever, and it's a tricky turn, and the cars speed there, and to have that particular flag thing there might be something worth looking at. Sorry.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Stuart Carr, 3 Crestwood Drive in Chatham. A couple of questions or comments. First, to echo Kathy Abbott's comment about the 2%, or not the 2 mil tax, whatever it is, on the open space. When is that discussion going to begin? I know when I was here a couple months ago, it was a couple months from then. So are we coming up on that now pretty soon, or when's that going to happen?
That's pretty much at the Township Committee's discretion as we get into the budget. So anytime after the first of the year, they'll need to make a decision about whether to leave the open space tax at 1/2 cent or have it revert back to something else. So that discussion will take place probably January, February.
Is that one meeting or a couple of meetings? How does that work? Will it be like robust discussion, or is it just it's basically a done deal and you vote? How does that work?
I have no idea how robust it will be. It may be
Okay.
It may be a slam dunk 5-0 when somebody makes a suggestion, or there may be discussion.
Well, I'd like to reiterate at least my preference for the full 2 cents, as the voters overwhelmingly approved a number of years ago. And again, we've cut back on that a number of times, nominally to save the taxpayer money, but again, that's like paying less on your credit card and saying you're saving money. Again, the idea of the open space levy tax, it's an investment in the community for getting opportunistic purchases, and I think we should consider that and not look at it as a tax. And if we do continue to think that we should be pushing back the half a cent to whatever I thought it was 2 cents originally. 2 cents. Okay,
The way that it's set up, the rate is set at 2 cents per $100 of assessed value. The ordinance that was first adopted, and I guess at this point it's 5 or 6 years ago, reduced it to a half cent, and it has basically a poison pill that if the Township Committee does not, again, each year set it, it automatically reverts back to the 2 cents.
And again,
So if they take no action, it's going to go back to 2 cents.
And I would recommend, again, or going back to take a look, I think around 96 or 98, somewhere around there, where there was a ballot initiative, and I believe there was overwhelming support for the 2 cents.
Yeah, there's actually been two.
Two.
It was originally 2, and then it was reduced to 1 after we had the reval in 2004. Because if you remember, if you were here then, when we did the property revaluation, it had the effect of doubling our ratables, which had the effect of doubling the tax without changing it. So the committee at that time reduced it to 1 cent to basically keep it level so that the same amount of money was being raised. And then it was subsequent to that that the decision was made, there was another referendum to go back up to the full 2 cents, notwithstanding the fact that the ratables had doubled. And from that point, then, it was cut to 1/2 cent. So
and again,
it
the
bounced
voters,
up and down a couple
the voters voted for the 2 cents,
They
one
did.
way or the other. So I would, again, encourage the committee to listen to that. And if we think that that's not the way to do it, let's have another referendum. And again, maybe things have changed. Maybe we don't want to do it at all. But
Those are all options to bring
good.
for
But we'd like to,
consideration.
again, encourage the idea of if we said we wanted to do it for a dedicated account, that we actually do that. Next question, again, apologies, wasn't able to speak to you, Mr. Chiccarone, over the last couple of weeks. Wanted to follow up a little bit on your question or comment when I asked a question before about the idea of using existing housing stock for the affordable housing, or at least starting with that. And you indicated that's on the table, but that we're probably going to have a bigger requirement than the 50 units that are going to be there at the skate park, if in fact that comes to fruition. I guess my question again is, what is the sequencing of looking at new housing stock versus existing housing stock, how we've been thinking about that? Is there an active search for existing stock to maybe, again, get all or most of the requirement that way as opposed to increasing the population?
The development of our fair share housing plan continues as part of ongoing litigation. And until we know or have a better idea of what the court is going to impose as our obligation, it's kind of hard to pinpoint each of the strategies that might be employed in order to get to a number satisfactory to the court. One of the options is to do, conversion of market rate to affordable. I don't have a number for you as to how many we might do. In the previous submission, if you go back to the third round plan that we did and submitted a few years ago that wound up not being acted upon by COA, I believe in that plan we proposed to do 10 market to affordable conversions of rental apartments at one of the existing complexes, and then there were some other things, continuing group homes and a variety of things. That document is available as a public document if you want to look at it. The new version, the new plan will be different, but it may contain some of the same elements.
So if we use your 500 number as the big number, 100 to 500 subject to a bunch of changes, is there a scenario wherein you could have the 500 units all existing housing stock, or is there a requirement that you have to increase the housing stock?
I can't imagine that being a scenario now. I think the cost of that would be prohibitive.
Again, can we run the numbers and see what the cost would be as opposed to prohibitive of, again, taking whatever the number is?
Very prohibitive.
Fine. Existing housing stock, because we're going to pay the price.
Very prohibitive.
That's fine. Understood. We will be paying the price if we bring in new stock, because we're going to have, again, the Board of Education dimension going forward. So one way or the other, we're going
Stu,
to pay.
I think everybody needs to really just be a little bit more patient and let this play out, because there will be answers to all of those questions about how many kids are going to be in the school. All of that stuff is going to be ultimately part of what's presented to the public. And I think there's a lot of misinformation already that's circulating, and rumors and speculation, and I would just urge everybody to take a deep breath and let this play out. We've been working on this for a long time. We're trying our best to get it right for the community.
Understood and appreciated. Again, just want to make sure we have numbers so we can understand how it works, because the idea of letting it play out is something where we find out after the fact. And if we could figure out what it would cost to have, pick a number, 250 units converted to affordable housing, it costs $100 million or whatever the number happens to be, so at least that's out there, and the public can say, you know what, maybe it's worth spending the money to do that in order to keep the population where it is. Maybe it's not. And prohibitive is a nice word, but I'd like to see if we can actually have the numbers as some public discussion before the fact, so we know that is an outlier scenario, but at least we know what that is, and then we can start working through how we're going to get money from other people to meet our requirements. But part of the dimension, again, in this discussion, hopefully, is the absolute population that we have in town, and want to make sure if we can keep it the way it is, that we can do that. And our friends over in Chatham Borough are saying they have to chase ratables in order to get the P&L to work. That's great. I think here we, again, should at least consider the idea of what it's going to cost us to look in our own pockets to spend money to maintain the lifestyle that we have here at this point. If it's prohibitive, that's fine, but that's for, again, the taxpayers, including you as a taxpayer, to discuss.
That's painting this wild scenario of some massive thing that's going to go on here, and that's not going to happen. Everybody needs to chill. They really do. You know, we're not looking at a massive increase in our population or our school population with any of this.
Understood. So if it, in fact, is not a massive number, that's even better. In which case, that makes the argument even stronger to say, let's go to Chatham.
You know, it ignores everything else that's already going on. You know, where we're seeing little ranchers being sold and, you know, senior citizens that have spent their life here selling and leaving, and we have, you know, young families coming in with multiple children that are going to the schools. That's going to continue. You're not going to stop the population from growing. This is a desirable place. People want to be here. So you're going to see more and more people coming in doing what we've been seeing for the last 15 years.
And that's fine. But that plus 100 units that we don't have now is that many more people. Again, I understand we have bigger population, that's fine, but just to encourage it by building additional stock,
Okay,
if we
so
don't need to.
we're going to look to get answers to this in the coming weeks.
We're not looking to build anything. We're looking to ultimately satisfy our constitutional obligation to provide an opportunity for a certain number of affordable housing units to be built in our community. That's what the court's going to mandate, and that's what ultimately we're trying to do.
And if we can do that through purchasing existing stock, is that a reasonable scenario, prohibitive notwithstanding? Is that a scenario?
If you're asking for my opinion, no, I don't think that's a reasonable approach to the whole thing. It may be a small part of a formula that gets us to where we need to be. It's not the solution.
We can pencil out, though, what it would cost if we were to go that route.
Be my guest, yeah.
I'm asking, well, I'll come in and we'll work that through. Okay, well, thanks again for
You
your
don't
time.
need to come in, do it at home.
Well, I can do it at home. Well, we'll figure that out. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
May I just speak one more?
Of course, Kathy.
Okay. I just would like to say that I know you have to do this in executive session with affordable housing and private building contracts, property contracts, but I think it should not be, the public should be informed as much as possible, because affordable housing is something that is going to change the town a lot, or maybe not if we have 100 units versus 500. But I don't think we should be, the public should be informed as much to the extent that it can be in terms of the options, and that's all.
And here's my problem with this whole discussion. We are doing exactly that. We're giving you as much information as we can. We are involved in litigation, and all the executive session discussions are about that litigation, nothing else.
All right, that's all. I just think the tone should be one of informing the public of what can be
How
and
about
can't
the
be
tone
discussed.
from you be not suggesting that we're hiding stuff? Because we're not. We are
I did
giving you
not
all
suggest
the
that.
information that is appropriate to give
Right,
you.
all I'm saying is that it would be nice even if it would be summarized by the Township Committee, even in a formal statement. Here's what we're doing, here are our options, and this is why we can and
If
can't
you
say
go on our
something.
website, Kathy, there's a whole section on affordable housing, which I would encourage you to visit and
Yes,
peruse.
right, okay. I just think the tone to the public should be very much, we know you're concerned, and not at all discouraging of public comment. Thank you.
I don't know that we're discouraging public comment.
No, I don't think necessarily, I
think,
Tom, that it's actually your tone, but...
my turn is that I'm frustrated when you get up and there's this innuendo that we're hiding stuff, that we're not sharing all the information that we can. You're standing up there telling us to do what we're already doing.
I did not intend to say you were hiding anything.
Anyone else have any public comments? Stuart?
Stuart Carr again. I'm not insinuating innuendo or anything like that. Again, I'm just asking if we can run some numbers, maybe hypothetically, if we were to take 100 units, pick a number, and say if we were to fund that internally at Chatham Township and say we're going to buy 100 units of Kushner properties at Chatham Hill, for example, okay? And that will be our 100 units of affordable housing dimension. Number one, is that legally something we can do in a 100-unit scenario? And point two, what would a market rate cost be for that type of activity? And number three, Mr. Cruz or whomever could tell us whether we could even legally do that type of thing. And see if something like that is viable. It may not be, but use that as at least one scenario to benchmark against using other people's money or encouraging developers to come in and build housing from their resources.
I think it's safe to say that the committee is reviewing all available options.
Okay.
I don't know how many times to say it. That is one of the things we're looking at.
Good. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, appreciate that.
Any other further public comments? Hearing no other comments, we'll close up the public hearing and we'll move on to the consent agenda. Any questions on the consent agenda? Greg, you want to read those off, please?
This evening, we have resolutions 2016-225, payment of bills, 2016-226, receipt of reports, 2016-227, approving meeting minutes, 2016-228, approving executive session minutes, 2016-229, authorizing AT&T land use extension, 2016-230, canceling various unexpended balances, 2016-231, canceling stale dated checks, 2016-232, authorizing a mandatory grant, and 2016-233 budget transfers.
Any questions on the agenda? No. Motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Sorry, Greg.
Mr. Gallup?
Yes to all.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. The next item up for discussion is the request for a right-of-way adjustment. Turn this over to all right, great.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the committee. My name is David Brady with the firm of Brady and Corial. This matter came to the committee's attention via a letter that I submitted back in November 9th. I hope everybody got a copy of that. It set forth our concerns, set forth a number of exhibits. If the committee will indulge me, maybe I'll go through that a little bit just in case what I explained isn't as self-explanatory as I hoped it might be. My clients are Gene and Terry Earl. They're at the intersection, they're at 37 Rose Terrace. That's at the intersection of Rose Terrace and Chatham Street. If you look on the letter that I sent you, Exhibit A has the tax map, and you can see that their lot is there at that intersection to the I guess I'd call it the southeast corner of that intersection. I want to point out Chatham Street is a paper street, shows as a street on the tax map, but it has not been improved as a street and was not improved as a street. If you turn to Exhibit B, you'll see how the Earl's lot is improved. Their house is slightly diagonal on the lot. There's a gravel driveway that comes from the house out through the paper street and out onto Rose Terrace. And by the way, if anybody at the committee level wants to see larger copies, I have slightly larger copies of all the exhibits. Sure. Okay. I've got two of each, so I guess you'll have to kind of... And Exhibit A, Mr. Mayor, should say, if you're looking at the large copy, it should say existing right-of-way option 1 in the title block to make sure you're looking at the same one that I'm talking about. And as you look at Exhibit A, you'll see that the property line of the Earl property kind of sweeps away from Rose Terrace following the sideline of Chatham Street. So the frontage that the Earl property has on Rose Terrace is really only about 51 or 52 feet. The arrangement there worked fine until we got to 2009 and the connectivity that Mr. Gollop talked about, when the township proceeded to install a bike path down Chatham Street. And as part of that procedure, the township vacated the public right to use Chatham Street as a street. The township reserved the right to use it as a bike path, but the right to use it as a public street was vacated. That left our clients, who formerly had frontage on a public street, an unimproved public street, but yet a street, a paper street that was dedicated to use as a street, with a situation where they no longer now have a driveway that goes directly to a public street. It goes across a piece of municipal land, which isn't a public street. It's essentially kind of an easement or a adverse possession and use of public land that isn't dedicated for a street. And I have some concern about that.
Well, that characterization is wrong.
Okay?
It's not adverse possession. You're saying your client has adverse possession?
No, what I'm saying is that the client used to have the right to use the paper street for its driveway because it was dedicated to the use as a public street. So use for vehicles to and from our client's house was permitted. When that was vacated, that right arguably no longer existed. So we now are going across a piece of public land that's no longer dedicated for the purpose that my client used it. I didn't mean to imply we were gaining adverse possession rights or anything like that. I'm just indicating that the use that we used to have, which was impliedly appropriately used because it was a public street, now there's a question as to the legitimacy of that. Our clients approached the township about this, and there was an attempt to address the situation with an ordinance that I've attached as Exhibit C, which provided that, I'm sorry, Exhibit C is not that. Exhibit C is the vacation of the public street, which reserved to the town the right to use the street for emergency access to the pumping station and to put the driveway in. But it removed that public right to use it as a street. The effect on my clients is that they are thinking of selling their house. They're at that point in life where they're going to sell their house. They approached the town about perhaps passing an ordinance that vacated a portion of the street, or excuse me, they gave them the right to use a portion of the street. The issue that arose was that the proposed ordinance required, one, our client to maintain the guardrail that was put in by the town in connection with the bike path, which our client didn't put in, so obviously they were concerned about any maintenance requirements. But more importantly, it indicated that their right to continue to use the driveway disappeared if the house was torn down. And the fact is, given the age of the house, the style of the house, etc., the house, once it's sold, will most likely be torn down and a more modern house in keeping with modern day expectations will be built. Looking at what that would mean to our client, if, as I said, if you look at Exhibit A, you'll see that they only really have about 50 feet of frontage on that street. And if you put a house in, you're going to end up with what we think is a difficult position for a buyer to put in the driveway. They're going to end up putting in, not that it's terrible, certainly many people have it, but I think you'll end up definitely with a front-facing garage, which is a little less attractive. You probably end up with getting it on what I would call the south side of the property, near the neighbor. What you have there now works. What's there is attractive. We'd like to be able to maintain that and like to be able to have someone who purchases it have the ability to maintain basically this driveway out. So we had Alfred Stewart do these plans. And he presented a couple different options. They're attached as Exhibit E to my plans. There's an option 1, where basically we were asking the town to vacate the street entirely so that our clients would gain a triangle of area that's in the bed of Chatham Street, It's about 2,100 square feet. That would allow the driveway to remain where it is. It would give additional frontage. If a new house was put in there, the house could be a little more normally situated, perhaps. That lot would be a little more typical of a lot with enough frontage along Rose Terrace. It would make the lot a little more compliant. Right now, the lot is just over 20,000 square feet. 25,000 square feet is the minimum in that zone. It would raise the lot up to 22,400 square feet. In the alternative, we have what is Exhibit F, which is a slightly different arrangement, again, asking that a portion be vacated. And in this arrangement, we're looking to have a portion vacated that is, as I recall, anything more than 15 feet from the center line of the bike path. That brings the portion vacated further back along the edge of our client's property. The thought there was the bike path is used, it is popular. We have people, public going by, and that would give a little more room on that side to maybe put in some shrubs, something of that nature, to put a little privacy between the public use of the bike path and the side of the house. If you look, I did attach, I didn't address, I did attach as Exhibit D some photographs. You can see there that if you're out on the street looking at the client's property, you see the lawn coming to the street. Looks like our client owns it, but there are yellow tapes there, and you can see that I put arrows indicating where they are. There's a significant amount of property. Looks like our client's lawn, looks like our client's property. Our client maintains it, but it's not. It's part of the municipal property. And as I say, if we have to give up this driveway, and when a new house gets built, try to fit the driveway in there, the situation there is going to look different. You're going to end up with, as I say, very little frontage, something that we think is a situation that would benefit not just the property, but the town to have a lot that's a little more regular, a little more in keeping with what the town envisions here. I think there was some concern, speaking with Mr. Chickarone, about could this add some more size to the lot and maybe result in some sort of future subdivision. That is not the intention. We have no objection to guarding against that with an appropriate deed restriction being placed on the property to protect the township against something of that nature.
The difference between Exhibits E and F, do you have a preference?
Yes, our clients would prefer F. It gives a little more privacy to the property. I think that it still maintains plenty of width, I think, for the township purposes of access to the pumping station. The township, when it designed this and put in that guardrail, I'm sure it had in mind it needed a certain width in order to get back there. Well, on Exhibit F, you're maintaining that width all the way back. So I think there's plenty of room for township purposes, but it allows that little bit of extra space on the side for some privacy from public use of the bike path.
Has this been before the planning board already, or has this been?
This doesn't have to go before the planning board. This is a question for the township committee as to whether or not to vacate part of the public right of way. Would you please address the... Albert, is your mic on? Thanks. Would you please address the sanitary sewer manhole that's there and what the impact is on it and how...
Yeah, I read through actually the statutes that deal with vacating paper streets or rights-of-ways, and it indicates in, I forget the statute number, I know I wrote it, I may have it written here. One of the statutes indicates that I was released...
It's cited in the ordinance that vacated a portion of the First Street, so...
Yeah, I think by state statute, if you vacate it, public utilities and cable companies reserve their rights for any existing lines that are within the area vacated. So I don't think it has any effect upon the sanitary sewer easement that's there. And it can certainly be not only just by operation of statute, but it can be specifically mentioned in any ordinance that the township might adopt.
Hypothetically, There's a couple of things that have always confused me about this. You know, what we've offered in the past, you know, was to assure the Earls that they could continue to maintain the use of the existing driveway. And frankly, I'm a little bit perplexed as to why we care so much about the next owners and the new house that's going to get built and where their driveway is going to go, because their driveway is not going to go where this one is. You know that, I know that. The new house is going to be tucked further in the back. This is a half-an-acre lot. You're going to see a large house get built there, and the 50-foot of frontage, in all likelihood, that's where that driveway is going to go. They're not going to bring a driveway in off of what no longer is a street but a bike path. So if you had a concept that showed the footprint for potentially a new house, where would the driveway be?
Well, we're looking to maintain the ability to put that driveway on the side like it is now. I don't know that I agree with you, Mr. Chickarone, that you know and I know. I don't know that. I've certainly, personally, I would not like my driveway, if I was to buy the house, I would prefer a driveway over on that side. I think it fits better, it looks nicer than just having a straight driveway out within that 50 feet in the front. You only have 50 feet.
I'm asking you, where would it be?
It could be in the exact same location it is now. The house could move back, but the driveway could stay on the side. With the driveway on the side, you're going to have a side-loading garage. Side-loading garage makes a much more attractive house.
Where on the street does the new driveway terminate?
The new driveway could terminate in the same position that the current driveway terminates. We're looking to maintain that possibility.
But the current driveway is not owned by the Earls.
Excuse me?
The current driveway is not owned by the Earls.
No, it's not. It's over the bed of the paper street.
Well, a portion of it is.
Right. Right.
See, I still think that a developer is going to maximize the use of the lot, and you're going to have you know, a 50-foot setback off of that rear line, which is the one that abuts the sewer pump station. The front yard's going to be Rose Terrace, and you're going to have two side yards, and the footprint of the house is going to be substantially pushed back from where it is. It's going to be turned to orient parallel to the rear property line, and in all likelihood, the driveway is going to have to come out onto Rose Terrace. I don't know. Why would you run it through the grass area?
We don't disagree that the driveway is going to come out into Rose Terrace, but you're going to have to figure out a driveway that comes out within that 50-foot frontage that's there. And we believe that having a longer frontage on Rose Terrace provides for options for a driveway that can result in a more attractive house.
Yeah.
The lot becomes more functional when it's
Why
got more
Why
frontage.
is that so important to the Earls as opposed to whoever the Earls sell it to? Why wouldn't they just come in after they purchase it and come in with their development plan and say, this is the house we want to build and here's our problem with locating a driveway, can you help us figure this out?
A lot easier for the Earls to sell the property if that issue is resolved now, rather than having someone come in and say, somebody who wants to build.
But I'm saying it may be a meaningless issue to the next person, because they may be putting their driveway 15 feet off of the, what direction is that?
South, I think.
South.
Or southwest.
Southwest side. They're going to be 15 feet off of that with a 15-foot wide driveway.
Right. So we get it on the record, Gene. My clients indicated they've lost interested buyers because this issue's been identified. That's the thing. I represent a number of builders. The builder comes in and sees uncertainty. That's his opportunity to get something at a low price. If you lose that uncertainty and make it certain, and you make the property more regular, you make the options for where you place the house and where you place the driveway a little greater than that 50 feet, and nobody has to come in to try to get this, what we're just going through now, later, that means that you get full price. You don't get taken advantage of, so to speak, by someone who says, I've got an issue, I've got an uncertainty, and I've got to be compensated for that risk.
You know, Tom, if the main concerns, which are that, I know you've had concerns about the subdivision on the other side that took place, and if that's, you know, deeded out, that they can't subdivide the property, and if the plan that's proposed protects the town's interest in the sewer line and the manhole, have we not covered the concerns of the town so that this could move forward?
I don't know, Bob. I mean, it just has always kind of troubled me that I just really don't understand the need for it. There's a fully developable 20,000 square foot lot or 22,000 square foot lot, whatever it is, that is perfectly suited for redevelopment exactly the way it sits right now. And I don't understand, frankly, why I just don't get it. I don't understand I guess I'm skeptical about how much this devalues the property. It's a full half-acre lot in Chatham Township that's buildable tomorrow with no variances needed or anything else. And
it's an undersized lot.
Pardon me?
It's an undersized lot.
How big is it?
It's 20,000 square feet, and at least according to Mr. Stewart's listing, 25,000 is required.
No, that's wrong. It would be 25 if it were a corner lot. That's the other benefit to your client when the street was vacated. The zone is 20,000 square foot, half acre. And there was a requirement adopted some time ago for corner lots to have two fronts, and basically you had to have 100 foot and 150 feet, or whatever the math is, for 25,000 square feet.
Then Mr. Stewart didn't identify that difference to me.
He's still treating it as a corner lot, and it's not. And if it were, you know, you'd have even bigger problems because you'd have a 50-foot setback off of Chatham Street and off of Rose Terrace, and you don't have that.
Let me just, skepticism is healthy. That's your job. But we had Ms. Earle on the record saying that this issue has prevented them from, selling the house, and I do take her at face value because, again, we've had we have a history with them as to what they did for the town with the.
I understand. Believe me, I'm really reluctant to be in this kind of adversarial discussion because I think the world of the Earls. They're extremely nice family, and I think that they're. I don't want to question their motives, but
so logically, what I'm playing with is skepticism is healthy, but they've represented on the record that they had this issue with the configuration of the property hindering the potential sale. They've hired counsel at great cost to come before the committee. So when I look at the facts of those things, I think, you know what, there must be an issue. Because if there wasn't an issue, they wouldn't have spent money retaining counsel. They wouldn't have spent the time to come before the committee to ask for relief. They would have said, you know what, it's good the way it is, and we'll make do. So the fact that they've engaged in this process, again, repeating myself, engaging counsel, attorney's fees, and spending the time and effort to come before the committee, I give credibility to Mrs. Earle saying, yeah, there is an issue. We've tried to sell it. And I'm representing to you that effort has been hindered by the configuration of the property. We've tried to address the concerns of the town regarding the sewer line and the concern about basically turning it into a windfall by subdividing the property, and they've deed restricted that out. So from my perspective, for all the things I've said, I give it credibility. I think what they're doing is addressing our concerns, and I think it's something that we should move forward.
How long has the property been on the market for?
Excuse me?
It's not on the market.
Is the property on the market, or?
No.
No, it's not on the market.
Come on up, Gina. Come on up.
The additional problem is that
Gina, come up and make sure you're on the mic.
every other home on Rose Terrace in the township has 100 feet for the frontage. If this house has to be placed back, it's going to completely be a weird thing on that area. And I think anyone who's gone on that busy cross street would know that. So
we really do care about the township and how it looks and the safety of people in that area. And the bike path is a wonderful thing. The bike path does not need a 50-foot roadway right-of-way. The bike path itself is, a lovely, lovely thing and a nice open space thing.
But going to the mayor's comment, you have had conversations with potential buyers.
We
This
have.
has been an issue.
And when they learn where the lines are, and it takes at least a third of the front yard, and a couple people here have been kind enough to look at that closely, including Tom, thank you. When you see that tape running across the yard, they're like, this is, really not a preferable thing. They would end up with a home that's really not in conformance and not attractive to that area. And, we don't care. We'd be happy to walk away. But we actually do care. We care about the future of Chatham. We hope to stay in Chatham. We hope our daughter with disabilities will be able to stay in Chatham. We're trying to provide for 2 homes because we have a family member who can't provide for themselves, and but who is a very integral part of the community. And so that's why we've gone to great lengths. There is no double access. So I understand Tom's concern. We weren't happy about the 2 non-conforming lots next door at 35. That was sad, but there are 2 separate accesses. The one has access off of Chatham Street. There is no double access to our property. There is no double access.
And I've represented to the committee that you're willing to place a deed restriction on your property.
Absolutely. And I think anyone who wants to preserve that area properly would want to do that as well. So we really do care about it. That's why we're here. I mean, I would, otherwise we would walk away and we wouldn't have gone to the tremendous expense. We've done everything that Tom asked us to do for the past 2 years. We've gotten multiple surveys at great expense. We've tried to meet and work things out. We haven't been able to. We've fortunately found Mr. Brady, who's willing to help out. We really believe that for the best for Chatham, it's not just best for us. We feel that it is best for Chatham to allow for this more normal configuration for Rose Terrace.
So this normal configuration, I'm looking at site whatever 1-1, it cuts into the paved path. What happens to the path if a new buyer comes in?
The bike path would stay, Mayor. Yeah.
Currently, as it is.
Absolutely.
Basically, there is a guardrail there that's on an angle to the property right near the bike path. We're staying on the southwest side of that. So the bike path's not affected. The guardrail kind of already establishes visually the break, so we're staying right just off of that. And then we're coming back to the back property line, so there can be some ability to put a little buffering, personal privacy protection sort of thing between the residents and the bike path.
And Tom, I give Tom credit. He was really helpful to us in 2009 when this first occurred. And the bike path was designed with a curve so that the driveway could stay. So thank you, Tom. And now we just want to, memorialize what Tom made happen to begin with, and that's to allow that driveway and that access to be able to stay where it is, rather than, make this a much further back house, the only one on the street, with a driveway so that the living area, it right abuts a public area. This way, if we do this, then the living area gets to be in the more private side of the property. And it's in conformance with every other home on the street. If we don't do that, you're going to have a really funny-looking home on the street.
Actually, Jean's point about the living area is something important that, frankly, I had forgotten to mention. If you end up keeping the existing frontage, you're basically forcing the driveway to be on the right-hand side of the lot as you look at it. And if you put the driveway and you put the garage over there, then the living area tends to go over towards Chatham Street, towards the bike path, towards where there is public. If you can keep the driveway essentially where it is, then the driveway where you're driving in and out, et cetera, and where you have your garage, that faces the bike path, and the living area can have a little more protection. a little more privacy, and especially with that extra strip along the side of the property, again, you can buffer it even more.
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask a question.
Of course.
This was a partial vacation back in 2013. Had there been a full vacation, who would own that shaded area or that hatched area?
Well, the basic law on a complete vacation of a street is the street's essentially divided down the middle, and the property goes equally to the adjacent property owners. That's the garden variety vacation. I'm sure there's some special circumstances, but that is what I would expect would happen here if it was completely vacated.
So in 2013, if there had been a complete vacation and not a partial vacation, what you're proposing tonight would have already occurred.
Even more so, because I think there would have been more property to vacate.
Then you really would own to the middle of Chatham Road.
Correct, Mr. Rizzo.
So your offer here is to almost meet halfway where you were in 2013 and now, to gain a little bit more land, but maintain the road, the path as it exists.
Correct.
Yeah, the bike path is terrific.
No, I just want to
It's used by a lot of people.
what would have happened
Yeah.
had there been a full vacation, and what the impact would have been to your property and the path.
Yeah, the issue came up because the bike path wasn't put in the center of where Chatham Street was. It is in a different configuration, which thanks to Tom, so that it could preserve the driveway area. And that was in 2009, just for the record, not 2013.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah, that's
apologize.
okay.
I was looking at the wrong.
No, 2013 is when we began the process to try and rectify the situation. Thank you all for considering it.
I have a question, and Tom, I know you can speak to this, and maybe John. As far as the need to maintain a portion of that for Chatham Township, for use and access to the pumping station in the event of whatever kind of emergency there would be.
No, the only area that they're discussing is, in both scenarios, E and F.
And F is the one we really would...
Are the hatched areas. So in one hatched area, it's up front, it's the triangular piece. In the other one, it's the hatch area plus a stem.
Right, so in no way
But a full vacation means they would own that property, subject to an easement for the public utility that is on that property, or any public utility that's in that area. So that would be, in essence, carved out of Chatham Road, but everything else would remain as currently designed.
Karen's question is really good. I'd like to address it directly. There's a pumping station at the end of Chatham Street, and when the bike path was designed, Tom smartly, or John, or whomever did, there at the both ends of the bike path are not only the barrier fences, but also a center pole, so that people can't drive down the bike path, but the pole can be removed so that there could be a fire truck or an ambulance or anything that needs to go down there can very easily go down there. And that would still be there
Mr. Rutsky can
completely.
verify that, but our thought was just looking at it with the guardrail that's there now. The guardrail sets a limit on how wide vehicles can be when it goes in, and we're not choking that down any further as it goes back.
No.
It's still as wide as it is at the opening. So if the opening's wide enough to get emergency equipment in, then they still can get emergency equipment in.
And that's important. That was a good question.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
We had a street vacation issue that came up a little over a year ago, I guess, Wilson Road off of Roosevelt Road, where I think that it initiated with the neighbors approaching us and saying hey, we've got this paper street here, it goes back to what's become parkland, and requesting that it be vacated. And we accommodated them by doing it the traditional way of half going to each adjacent homeowner. And I know, because it's more or less in my neighborhood, but one owner subsequently knocked down the house and sold it, and it's a new...
That was an issue so that they wouldn't have to front on a corner lot, am I correct?
Right. So it simplified them. I think it gave them more of a side yard. Tom made the point, it's only a 15-foot side yard, and it's from the middle of what was the street. So they got a bigger buildable footprint out of it, and I'm sure a simplified situation when they went ahead and sold it. It was a simpler situation because I guess there were no utilities underneath that paper street. So I mean, as a matter of philosophical approach, it seems as though we have a precedent of trying to accommodate these kinds of things when we can do it without causing a problem for the township. And I'm trying to apply that same logic to this case, and it strikes me that a 50-foot right-of-way for what's now really just an 8-foot pathway does seem like overkill. And can we reach some kind of...
This property already benefited in the same exact way, because when the street was vacated for street purposes, it no longer was a corner lot, so they don't have a 50-foot front requirement off of Chatham Street. And they also now conform, because 20,000 conforms where they didn't have the 25,000 feet required for a corner lot. So they've already gotten that benefit.
Well, except that the 50-foot right-of-way remains.
Correct.
So that part of it is still out there. And
right, but that right-of-way is very different because it actually does serve the public. There is a walkway there. There is, we have our pump station at the end of that walkway, whereas the Wilson was a paper street that didn't go anywhere.
Right. So I guess in my mind, it does raise the question of what do we need to accommodate that pump station and the pathway? Because it does strike me as a reasonable request. I mean, we've all heard as township community members that there are some people out there who feel that a pathway is a problem. I don't think we share that opinion, but I mean, the prospect of pedestrians walking on a pathway alongside your private property for some people is a negative, and it was not treated that way in this case. The Earls encouraged this pathway to be built, and it's a great asset to the neighborhood. It creates good walking connectivity again in all different directions, and I do see the logic of that it's better for any house on that lot to have a driveway on that side of the house as part of the buffer between the pathway and the house. That there will be some people who perceive that as being a benefit, and that I think that makes it a benefit to the township as well as to any future property owner. So again, I guess it comes back to, well, do we really need 50 feet to accomplish the township's goals of what's needed for the pathway and what's needed for the sewer, underground sewer? And John, I don't know, to service that sewer, what are we losing in the way of having a dedicated easement and a 30-foot right-of-way?
Well, the one comment that I've had from the very beginning is I don't believe they should be plotting out all the utilities, because that sanitary manhole, I'm not sure if that's a sanitary manhole or a storm sewer. I mean, it's not a sanitary, but actually a storm sewer for water, because I believe the sanitary actually goes straight, and I haven't been out there in years to really look at the plan that we did for the pathway, but we need to make sure the utilities are accurately depicted on the plan, so to make sure that we are maintaining the access to all the utilities, not just the sanitary sewer. Typically, we have a permanent easement of 20 feet through the center of the line, which does cover most of the area that they're hatching. So if it was to be considered, perhaps either plot the utility properly and create a permanent easement, or just vacate and access, that hatched area, it just continues to be allowed to be, available to us for maintaining the utilities.
Is that your recommendation?
Yeah, I think that, I think the utilities is the primarily of my concern. I don't believe that, before this pathway was installed, I believe this area was heavily vegetated. It wasn't like it was a cut-through that you're going to access the pump station through Rose Terrace. You're going to access it through Chatham Street. So, and we're probably maintained. If we have to do an emergency, it's going to be through Chatham Street. So, I can, regarding the pump station access.
John, in the event of something like the October storm we had a couple of years ago where you had trees down left and right, the fact that Chatham Street is by and large a borough street could impede the township's access to that greatly. In the
Sure.
event that we had a problem reaching that from Chatham Street, which we would not be able to dictate clearance of since it was borough.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we put the removable posts in case we had to do it, and so we still have that access. But I fully appreciate Tom's position because what they didn't illustrate is what is the existing building envelope and what's the change in the building envelope, and that's not really depicted on the drawings that we have. It is a very unique piece of property on how you draw the front yard setback because of that curve, and I would have you can take the worst case scenario and follow that 50 feet and create a very narrow building lot, but I wouldn't interpret it that way. I would interpret that the 50, given the way Chatham Street was vacated as a roadway, you would just continue that 50 feet and come over. So I don't know if this is really creating a much larger building envelope. It is increasing it, but is it increasing it to the point of that necessity? So kind of, I see the point of regarding the development potential. Obviously adding more square footage to the property is always a benefit because every single tear down rebuild, they max out the building coverage, they max out the impervious coverage, and every square foot that they gain is a bigger house, and that's what's going to go there. So,
can you put a deed restriction to maximize the size of the home that's built or anything like that? If that's a concern, can you put a deed restriction to?
But would we want to?
I don't know. I'm asking.
Yeah,
Is that a concern
if that's necessarily if the ordinance stands regarding the size of the lot, so it's that the ordinance is already in place to proportionalize the proper size of the house to the size of the lot. So I'm not sure that would be a necessity.
Okay.
If we're increasing the lot size, it should be increased on the house. Certainly some of the discussions, do you need to vacate? Can you just give them an easement to maintain the existing driveway? That would give continued. Yeah, that certainly seems to accomplish the same, and just I guess when you step back and look at it, we again, my feeling is the utilities is my main concern, to make sure that we always have access to those utilities, and and then it's not plotted, so that just concerns me regarding being definite on making the recommendations.
We have no objection to that. I think that, in fact, the town, under the statute that I looked at, has to, and by right, maintains that right for an easement for the utilities. We need some more detail as to, rather than just a blanket utility easements or utility rights are reserved. Mr. Rutsky thinks the town would be better served by plotting it and saying so many feet to either side. I don't have any objection to that. That's a reasonable request, certainly. I mean, the big issue here is...
Maybe I misunderstood. I thought John was saying an easement allowing the driveway to stay there, which is what was proposed, solves the problem.
Well,
and if the future development moves the driveway, so be it.
I heard that he was concerned that he wanted to make it clear that there was an easement for the sewer. I think it's labeled as a sanitary sewer, and that there was an easement that the township would know that it had the right clearly to go in there and maintain it, and our clients would have no ability to object or claim damages or anything like that.
Yeah, it's always, when we make these decisions on vacating a road, it's permanent. And certainly the one on Roosevelt, it was clear that it was a wooded parcel, clearly in the woods, in a flood zone. It's something that we would never go into that area. This one is just that, the reservation of would we ever use it for any other purpose, and are we looking at the first scenario that they came up with, and that hatched area is just that hatched area is the easement that they can install a driveway anywhere in that easement. I think that also accomplishes what they want. Covers the existing driveway, so it's multiple ways of looking at it.
I don't know why we did the vacation of Chatham Street in the first place. When the bike path was put in, I don't remember the discussion as to what the rationale was for vacating it for street purposes.
I'm not sure, Mr. Chacon, but my clients have some understanding it had to do with some funding from Green Acres or something. There was some requirement, perhaps.
My recollection, it was the opposite property owner pushed for it. That was my recollection.
Yeah, in the back of my mind, I'm remembering that he was skeptical, and there was some issue with him.
He thought it was going to open it up as a roadway,
Yeah.
and he wanted it just to be a path, and that he pushed for that, to be dedicated for road purposes.
And we think that the town, since it is not going to be a roadway, doesn't need the entire 50 feet. The location of the guardrail as it is now would indicate that that width that's near the guardrail, which can be maintained all the way back, is more than sufficient. I understand the concern that Ms. Schwartz had about what if something happens and we have to get access through the borough and we may not be able to, but I think there's still plenty of access here. It gives a little more certainty to a buyer of this property. You're going to end up eventually with a modern house with a slightly bigger lot. It's going to be more taxes for the town. I don't see that there's a downside to the town. The utility is certainly going to be able to be maintained there.
If I can just add to the history for a second. I think there was grant money to establish the sidewalk at Southern Boulevard and another sidewalk area. It was the beginning of the Safe Streets to School initiative that we supported fully, and it was before this bike path was built. There were rocks and there were, it was a very rough trail. It was still a trail that was used by residents. It wasn't particularly safe. It was very rocky. And, now bikes can go on it and baby carriages can go on it and walkers can go on it, and it can safely be used as opposed to before. So it was a concerted, purposeful effort that was supported by the Open Space Committee. I think Bob chaired it at the time. And the grant money was obtained by the good citizens that do the work behind that. And it was a specific effort to not ever have that road go through there because it hadn't for however many years. And it was just to maintain it as open space and maybe eventually make it even to more of a park area as well as a bike path.
Was there a general consensus in the committee, what we want to do? Thoughts?
Well, I had said that, as long as, I think the two main concerns are the deed restriction and, the easement for the sewer line, and if those can be, worked out, I would be in favor of going ahead.
Mike?
Same.
Karen?
Well, I don't think it's the job of Chatham Township to maximize property values for our residents.
I understand.
I think that all things being equal, when market forces take place, you're going to find a builder who will come in and buy that lot because that's just what builders do.
Right.
When you're talking about uncertainty, you're talking about the fact that this has been a matter of discussion for years now.
But I think what you're going to end up with is a design that may not be anywhere.
If you remove that uncertainty one way or another by reaching a decision, then the lot can go up on the market and somebody will say, what about this driveway? And you'll say, yes, well, the decision was made in January of 2017 and this is what it's going to be.
Right, but I think then you'll end up, with all due respect, with a a house design that is not as attractive as it would be if the driveway can stay on that side.
And with all due respect, I don't see a lot of unattractive homes in Chatham Township.
Well,
They kind
I
of
said
are
not
all
as
pretty
attractive.
My main concern, and I'll echo the concern of my colleagues, is that Chatham Township has unmitigated and unfettered access to a utility that is necessary to all of our residents. So my inclination is to say, leave it as it is and put an end to the discussion, as long as Chatham Township has access to the utility, and keep the lot the way it is right now, and move on.
But just saying that Chatham has access to the utility through the bike path. So there's a dedicated, and that was part of the design of it, because it had to have access for ambulance and emergency vehicles. So there's a dedicated access on the bike path itself, with I think the pole that's removable on the macadam to get to the So that was part of the whole.
That's not an issue.
That was part of the whole design of the bike path, to make sure that emergency access was available. So this is not going to affect that design.
Right. Right, and that, of course, was a concern. So we've taken that off the table. That's one less uncertainty. But my other feeling is that it's not Chatham Township's job to make sure that we augment the value of people's homes by giving away parcels of land. I don't think that it's a particularly good precedent, whether it's a small parcel or not. And if the situation that the Earls are facing is that there's uncertainty, well, by putting an end to this conversation, I think we'll put an end to the uncertainty too, and then the Earls can move along with selling their home, and now we'll know what it is.
Come on up.
Come in, go up there. There's a wireless mic. You could take it too.
Oh, one way or the other.
No.
When the non-conforming two lots were approved, do you not think that increased the value for the owner of those, when those two lots were subdivided and it's now non-conforming lots? Clearly, the lots were worth more.
I think that was a matter for the planning board, sir, and I don't think that we can discuss the planning board's decisions here at the township level, if I'm not mistaken.
No, that's what I was going to interrupt to say, that you did not grant that subdivision. That was done at the Board of Adjustment, an independent body. You're a legislative body. They're a quasi-judicial body. So it's two different things. Right. You're being asked as a matter of policy whether or not you should vacate a portion of that paper street. That's the issue before you.
And I really don't think it's a matter of money. I mean, it's a matter of putting a house up that looks in keeping with all of the rest of Chatham. It's not putting a house up on a funny angle and having to put the driveway in an area that might or might not look nice. I mean, I have no feeling that we're going to make more money by having this done. And it would help us, as a family, it would help us a lot to be able to go to the next step in our lives. So we would appreciate it if you could find it in your heart to approve it. Thank you.
Mr. Earl said an important thing, and that is approve it. I want you to understand, you're not approving anything tonight.
This is a discussion.
It's a discussion, and the only thing you'd be approving or what you would be authorizing is authorizing me to develop an ordinance to accomplish one of either, well, you wouldn't authorize me to do anything if you were going to leave it the way it is, but it would be authorizing an ordinance to be drafted to either go to option 1 or 2. And then next year, that ordinance would be introduced and it'd be subject to essentially the same discussion again, because you'd have a new committeeman and one of the committeemen is absent tonight. So the only direction you would be able to give me now is to draft an ordinance.
So would you craft two ordinances for us to review, or just we choose
No,
between one and two?
it's just one ordinance, and
Two
it could-
options.
and then what you would attach is map A or,
Yep.
or map B.
All right, well, Mike's in
And-
favor of it,
and-
Bob's in favor of it, I'm in favor of it, so
Yeah. And,
I think we can
okay.
move on.
But there is an additional factor, and that is, I think you were going to agree to or suggest a couple of conditions here. One, that any costs associated with this, any of the professional fees, publication costs with an ordinance are the responsibility of the Earls. And I believe that's something that Mr. Brady would agree to. And also, that obviously the vacation must conform with applicable law. And so, so the direction you would be giving is to prepare an ordinance to accomplish one of those partial vacations, essentially at the Earl's expense, and obviously subject to the vacation statutes that Mr. Brady has referred to. Yeah, Mr. Cruz and I spoke about this briefly. Of course, it has to be per statute. When he said, and when he brought up the issue of costs, I spoke with my client. They're reluctant to write an open check. They understand the concept, and they understand to the degree this is solving an issue for them, that it would be unexpected that the townships would say, well, then it's at your expense. They were curious as to what those expenses might be. I outlined for them the various publication steps, et cetera. They were concerned about what might be involved in drafting an ordinance and having it reviewed. I had no idea, Mr. Cruz, what to suggest.
The answer is you will have control over that because you already have a model ordinance.
Right.
That was the one that was done in 2013 when that occurred. You also have the ordinance that I've already prepared for the proposal on granting an easement.
Right.
So you have control over that. The more work you do that I find satisfactory, I'm just then doing review as opposed to reinventing a wheel. And I'm just making sure that the ordinance reflects the will of the Township Committee and is consistent with applicable law. And if you're going to plot the utilities as Mr. Rushke has suggested, again, then that's not an expense that Mr. Rushke would incur. He would just simply be reviewing what your engineer has done.
Then that's fine.
And the publication costs.
Are the publication costs?
Those are, in the overall scheme of things,
Nothing.
I don't think it's.
Right. That was not the concern. The concern was, where does this run with professionals?
Well,
because you know how we are.
Right. It's your. So you can control the process.
By helping out.
Right.
Okay. That's more than fair.
Great. So
Thank you.
Move forward. All right, we'll now open it up for a hearing of citizens. Everyone wants to come before. If the matter is not on the agenda,
Thank
please.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Anyone else want to say anything? Kathy? All right, we'll close the public hearing. I guess we'll motion to move to executive session after, Greg, you want to read the resolution? Oh.
Just so I'm clear. So there was a consensus to move forward, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, this evening our executive session resolution is as follows. Whereas NJSA 10:4-12 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of the specified subject matter. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Litigation in the matter of the Township of Chatham for a judgment of compliance of its third round housing element and fair share plan, docket number MRS-L-1659-15, collective bargaining agreement, PBA, and property acquisition or investment options, open space. It is anticipated that the minutes on the subject matter of the executive session will be made public upon conclusion of the matter under discussion, and in any event when appropriate pursuant to NJSA 10:4-7 and 4-13. The Township Committee will come back into regular session and may take further action. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Motion to approve? Second?
Second.
Mr. Gallup?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.